Hey, welcome folks to our webinar. My name is Phil Thompson. I'll be your maitre d' today. The webinar is called Church in the Virtual World, Unlock the Power of Remote Production. Excuse me, I'm a little hoarse today. I've been dealing with a cold for the last 5 years, but we'll get through with it. All right, so we want to welcome you again here today. We are excited about this webinar. We're doing this in conjunction with PTZOptics. Of course, we are streamingchurch.tv, and we have got a special giveaway coming up here in a moment. We'll introduce our host as well. There will be some Q&A that we will take after Stephen Heywood does his little presentation here. Stephen's our guest. We'll let him talk for a moment here in just a couple minutes. But if you have questions about what we're talking about today, we're talking about HIVE, which is a new feature, a new product from PTZOptics. If you have questions, you can type them in the chat, and we will get to that, to the Q&A afterwards. Let's move on here and just talk a little bit about what we're going to be giving away. That's right, stay tuned to win. PTZOptics is giving away a Studio 4K, and that will be happening at the end of this webinar. We'll tell you how to win, so you got to stay tuned to learn how you could possibly win this. And again, this is a cool prize. We appreciate Stephen and the folks at PTZOptics for providing this. All right, so one thing I do want to mention, and that is this is, of course, our webinar today. It's live. We will record it, but we also have past webinars that we have done for a long time here. So anytime you want to see stuff we've done in the past, just go to streamingchurch.tv/webinar, and you can see all these webinars. In fact, Stephen did a webinar with us about 2 years ago about PTZOptics, and so we've got a lot of webinars that you can look at for free by just going there. All right, let's talk a little bit about, introduce our host very quickly. Our CEO and founder is Steve Lacy. He founded this company back in 2001. It came out of our church, and there are lots of great things besides streamingchurch.tv. We'll talk a little bit about that later. We're glad that Steve is with us. Steve has been involved in church leadership for a long time. Our other guy here is, of course, Michael Gray. He does tech support and marketing with us, and just like Stephen and all of us actually here today, Michael's been involved in ministry in several different roles. I just say all this because we understand what's going on when it comes to church stuff. That's really what makes us different from a lot of organizations, a lot of companies. We love helping churches. We've got experience with that. And of course, I'm Phil Thompson. I do customer care. I've got a history that goes back into broadcasting in the late 70s, as well as church work, bivocational much of the time, although I was a senior pastor for about 8 years as well. And our guest today, who is going to be really talking about HIVE, is Stephen Heywood. Stephen is involved with PTZOptics. And Stephen, of course, just like all of us here today, has been involved in specializing in house of worship things. And so, Stephen, I'd like you to just talk a little bit about who you are and get into what we're going to talk about today.
Well, Phil, thanks you and Steve for inviting me to come on today. It's a pleasure to be here. And yeah, I wear a lot of hats at PTZOptics, strategic partnership manager, broadcast engineer, product evangelist. I pretty much do a lot of that. But in my unworking hours, I guess you can call it that, I am also an assistant pastor / children's ministry pastor. My wife and I, we share that role. And so as you stated, we know churches and we know what's going on and the problems that churches have and whatnot. So yeah, I'm excited to show folks this because I think we're entering into a new paradigm, if you will, in technology where there's a lot of cool stuff coming out that are going to help houses of worship that maybe don't have a tech guy on staff like me or you or Steve accomplish what they need to accomplish.
All right, well, cool. So let's get into a little bit about what we're going to talk about today, Stephen. HIVE, this is pretty advanced stuff here. What is HIVE? And show us a little bit about what this product is.
Sure. So we developed HIVE. It's been a year going. We've had an open beta for this product, and I'm going to switch over to it here right quick so you guys can see it in the interface. We've been developing this for quite some time. It's been in beta for a year. We announced it last year at NAB. And my hope is this year at NAB, we can finally take the beta tag off of it and present this to the folks. And what really got us thinking about this is how everything's transitioning to the cloud. But when the pandemic hit in 2020, a lot of churches struggled. I know we saw an uptick in people trying to buy web cameras, people trying to buy just anything that they could to keep their church service going. And that's where kind of Hive came from. As you guys are seeing right now, this interface, this is completely web-based. You can run it on a Mac or a PC. Now, what you're seeing right now is our church sanctuary. And yeah, nobody's there, so it's dark. You're just seeing the LED lighting that we have that runs 24 building. But you can add as many cameras as your computer and your bandwidth can basically give you. So right now, we're in the process of redoing our network because some of our net switches ended up dying, like most places, So we wanted to make it more robust and go with a larger network. So I'm only bringing in one right now. But what I want to do is I want to bring in another camera. And what's cool about ours is not only can you bring our cameras in, but you can bring in competitor cameras. So maybe you're sitting here going, well, I never use PTZOptics cameras. I've used Bird Dog, or I've used Sony or Panasonic. Well, that's okay because we have that ability, right, to bring that in. But for us, I'm going to choose camera 3 here. Let's see if we can pull this in. It'll pull up any NDI camera or RTSP camera. There you go. You can see the seats at the church. That's in real time. And then you can click continue. So it'll ask you, what protocol do you want to use? You want to use NDI? Yeah. We're going to lower the bandwidth just for this presentation so that you guys don't see any kind of delay or anything like that. But know that you can do up to 4K on this. And I'm going to choose everything low. So it's going to come in at 360p because, again, we're working on our network at the church. I don't want to incur any problems while we're doing this. So your connected controls, here's where you can select your brand. As you can see, we have a plethora of Panasonic, you name it, JVC, Lumens, Marshall. I mean, any PTZ camera that you can think of, any manufacturer is pretty much in here. So even if you don't have a PTZOptics branded camera, you can still use Hive. Now, there's one caveat that may make or break your decision, and go with our cameras, because I'm not a sales guy. So I'm not trying to sell you on this, but I want you to think about this, because our cameras are going to be what's called Hive linked. And just like the giveaway camera that we're giving away later, the Studio 4K, you're going to start seeing on our cameras now Hive linked attached to the camera. And what that means is Steve and Phil being out in Arizona and me being in Ohio here, I could set those cameras up, send them to Phil or Steve, and have them, all they have to do is connect it to their network, and they'll show up here in my Hive system to where I can remotely control them. Now, with another branded camera, it's going to be a little bit harder, where you're going to have them add it to the Hive system and then send you an invite, and it kind of just goes through a little bit of a process. Is it difficult? No, it's not difficult to do that, but it is an extra couple steps that maybe people don't want to do. So as you can see right now, I've got 2 cameras added, and right now I've highlighted what we call as a fast frame. And what that's going to do is, if you click on it, what it'll end up doing is it'll zoom in. Let's see if we can get that motion here on camera. It zooms into whatever I put on the box. So if your senior pastor's out of frame and you want to do a quick fast frame at the pulpit here, you can set it and then just click on it, and it'll move that fast frame right into your head shoulder shot, and so forth and so on. So we have some of these tools in here. We have other options up at the top here that you can do for movement as well. I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of the movements because, well, we've all seen some of that stuff here. You can play around with it, because this will be free for one camera. So if you have one camera and you want to try it, it's free. So down here, right below the video preview, you'll have positions and presets. So I've already set up some presets just to kind of show you, and we'll create a new preset right after I'm done here. So as you can see, I can just click on the preset. So if I'm a remote camera guy in Phil's church, I could sit here and set this all up so Steve doesn't have to do it. I have the ability to just Steve says, hey, the cameras are online, you do your thing. So I can, on the right-hand side, adjust focus, adjust zoom. I can move the camera however I deem fit, just like any PTZOptics or any PTZ camera, software. You have that ability to move and zoom and do all that kind of good stuff with it as well. So let's see here. Image, let's go into this. Image, if you want to adjust your image, if you don't like the brightness, you don't like the contrast, the color mode, all that good stuff, you can do that here with the image and set presets. as well. If you're somebody that likes to work off of grids, we have different grid options here, especially with lower thirds. So you don't have the lower third running through the pastor's mouth as he's talking. You can set up a grid and adjust it. Since we're using 2 cameras and you're like, well, I'd like to see all the cameras at once and not just in this little frame on the side. Well, we've got a multi-view that you can set up and see the cameras in real time and set different coordinates, based on the camera. As you can see here, I'm moving the camera around with the pointer tool. I guess we can call it that. And let's say, let me go up here. Let me go up to the flag here that we have on the back sanctuary wall. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a preset of that. Okay, there's the preset. And all I did was click on it. Very simple. And my team is going to get so mad at me on Sunday because they're going to be like, all right, who messed with the cameras all week? Nobody was here. And I'll be like, I don't know. Must be some Smurfs running around in the church. So you can see here, I made 2 presets. So if I want to go back to the American flag, I can just click on it. Boom, American flag. If I want to go back to the doorway, boom, you can go back to it. And there you can see our PTZOptics 30X right there on the wall. That's our main camera. That's how we have it set up in the church. We put the words on the back screen for the singers and makes it easy, as well as scripture, because the senior pastor's still getting used to using the digital technology. He wants everything on paper, but we're trying to break him of that slowly. I feel like I've been doing that for 10 years, but hey, neither here nor there. One of the other things with this, okay, you can add audio. You can come over to the audio tab, and what it'll do is it'll find audio that's on your network. We have a Behringer X32 mixer. So currently that's shut off in the sanctuary. It's not turned on. The only thing that's turned on, I made them leave the computer on with so I could show you guys the cameras and do the demo. But normally the Behringer X32 would show up here, but since everything's off, you're not going to find anything. So you would select that, and that would be your audio if you wanted that, to be recorded or added to it, which brings us to the recording. You have the ability to record. You can start recording now. What's cool about this is if you have a big church, or even a little church, and you want to record cameras independently. Let's say little Johnny's getting baptized on Sunday, and he's on camera 2. You could just put a check mark here and record camera 2 and select the audio. Obviously, we don't have any audio right now. And that camera will record no matter what the switching happens. It doesn't matter. It'll just record that. So you can give that video of little Johnny to his grandmother or his parents of the baptism. So that's kind of cool to be able to do some of that, as well as NDI output. So why would you want HIVE? Why would you even want to go down this road? Well, if you don't have somebody at your church that can do tech, this is a cool feature that we have built in is NDI output. Steve could be, not feeling his best and can't make it to church, but he's in charge of the production. Well, he could be running vMix or OBS on his computer at home. He could start the NDI here and pull in every camera source from HIVE that is in his HIVE into vMix and do the production right from there, stream out to churchstreaming.tv or streamingchurch.tv, excuse me. And you could go out there to YouTube, to Facebook, all these different destinations, wherever they allow you to go to, and you're on a roll. He doesn't even have to leave. He could be sitting there in his pajamas, eating his breakfast, and be able to control the cameras and feed it into vMix or OBS and have a perfect production. And you don't have to do anything at the church. Steve would be able to just control everything and do everything from there. And you can also choose if you just want one camera. Steve might want just camera 2 come into his house because he really's got to watch that because the other guy's got everything else under control. You can do that as well. So it's really, really cool to have all these different options to be able to do this. Again, I want to emphasize the amount of cameras that you can run in this is going to be dependent on the hardware that you have or the internet that you have. If you have a very small internet pipe, let's say 5 megs down, 1 meg up, you're probably only going to get 1 or 2 cameras in there because that's what your bandwidth limitations are going to be. And the resolution, right? You're not going to stream 4K with 4 cameras on a PC that's maybe 15 years old or 10 years old. Right now, my PC is brand new. I just upgraded it. So when I've tested this, I can get about 4 cameras in here at 4K pretty well. And I have one of the newest i5 chipsets, which is really powerful comparing it to like some of the mid-range Ivan chips from a couple of years ago. So for my needs, this works. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at Mac or PC. And, let's say Steve can't sit at his computer all day. He wants to pull it up and fills out in his out in his pool trying to get rid of his 5-year-old cold. He can take an iPad or a Windows tablet and pull it up on there and control it with his finger. Doesn't need a mouse, doesn't need a keyboard. He can enjoy the Arizona sun and, control the church service and still hear and see all the great things that are going on. Now, a lot of questions that come up, I was like, okay, this is great. But what about audio? I have the audio, but is there other audio options? The cool thing about this technology is a lot of people are developing products that are cloud-based. So you need to check it out. There are audio solutions out there. There are, camera solutions, but this is really the one that encompasses everything into a centralized location to make your job easier. Man, guys, I wish I had this about 10 years ago. Actually, I wish I had this during the pandemic. Would have made my life so much easier. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but after seeing the demo, right?
Exactly. So,
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Stephen, just a quick question. You mentioned, you're walking through some of these features and these were going against some PTZ cameras. Is the controlling of the cameras and stuff the same regardless of what camera I have? I mean, where you had to click and drag or you set up those presets?
As long as it's a PTZ camera, it doesn't even matter if it's a competitor of ours. It doesn't matter. You can control it the same way inside of Hive.
All right. Are we ready for some Q&A here in just a moment?
Q&A, there's a few other features that are in there, like, showing the network of how it's usage. I mean, I'm able to do that. Let me do that real quick. Let me just cut back over that real quick.
Yeah.
So we could show that inside of Hive at the top. This is one thing I didn't show is our monitoring system. Shows you what resolution, shows you the quality level. You can see it's a 4.5 out of 5.0. It's showing the bit rate. Again, we're only doing 360p because, I don't want to bog down this. I want you guys to see this in real time since we're working on the network the best possible. Shows you the IP. You can get into, if we had audio sources and recordings going, you'd be able to go in there and check those as well. You'll notice there's a little box here with a cloud up in the upper right corner here. It's kind of oranged out. That'll let you know if you just want to stream it on your main network. So if somebody was in an office and you didn't want it to necessarily go out over the internet, but you wanted to have control in another room of the building, you can do non-internet, or right now I have it streaming over the internet, and that's what that means there. With the bridge here, that's what we call the application. There's a little tiny application you need to install on your PC. Now you can see my CPU usage right now is at 42.1%. I am using NDI screen capture, so that's probably adding to it. But you can see, just even on this beefy machine, having two cameras, it's kind of taxing. So I want to set that expectation. So you want to make sure you have a really, really good machine if you're going to do multiples and cameras. Over here, we have the share button. So earlier I mentioned, guys, that if I wanted to share this, say, with Steve or anybody for that matter, I could do that. If I could send Phil a link to his email address, I could send it to Steve, I could send it to any of you guys, and you'd be able to control the cameras that I have local. That's the cool thing about Hive. No matter where you are in the world, you could have a professional setting up your church cameras, getting it all dialed in for you, white balancing, everything, the whole 9 yards, color correcting, just by sending them a link. And that's the cool thing. And this is the process you would have to go through with competitor cameras. Since PTZOptics Hive cameras, I would hook it up to my network, add it to Hive, ship it off, right? It's automatically. All they have to do is plug it into their network. Well, like I mentioned earlier, with the, like, say a bird dog camera, since a lot of people in the US, they use bird dogs. That's one of our closest competitors. Bird dog, they could set that camera on a network. They'd have to go into Hive, as you saw me earlier, and add the camera under the video area here. And then the person on the other end, like me, would be able to get control of it. But until then, that's where we're at right now. So that's where this is really cool. So just kind of keep that in mind as you go. Other than that, right now, I don't know if our beta is still open, because I know they've been kind of kicking that around. But if you want to try it, if you want to see, head over to hive.ptzoptics.com and sign up, and you can try it for free right now in beta. Kick the tires on it. Like I said, if it's open, you'll be able to get in. I just don't recall if they pulled the plug on it yet or not. But if not, you want to go kick the tires on it, go right ahead. Be my guest. I think you'll enjoy it. But Yeah. So that's pretty much the interface, what I showed you there.
Well, that's cool. We've got a bunch of questions lined up here.
Awesome.
And by the way, if you hear water running in the background, I'm not next to the bathroom. I actually have a fountain in my office, which drives Steve Lacey crazy. It doesn't bother me yet, so I'm there. But I have a fountain. I can't shut it off. So let me just go over before we get to the giveaway and before we get to the questions here. Let me just go ahead and show that website again for you. If I can get this up here and everybody can see it, PTZOptics.com/Hive. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
All right, good. So you can go there and you can learn more about Hive. We're going to give away this camera, not this camera, but a camera here in a moment, and take some Q&A. I do want to remind you we have another webinar coming up. It will be happening April 22nd at 12 noon, and we got George Burchell from Epiphan, and he's going to talk about how you can build a volunteer-friendly live streaming setup, which everybody wants to have that, right? You want your volunteers to be able to use your streaming setup without a bunch of hassle. That's going to be happening April 22nd at 12 noon Eastern time, and you can sign up. We'll make that available soon, but it will be eventually webinar.streamingchurch.tv. So that's coming up. And again, check out our past webinars, as I've said in the past. And we have other resources for you as well. We have a new product called dailydive365.com. Just go to that website. This is really taking your sermons and creating daily devotionals as well as some other things for you. It's all automated, pretty much all automated. Go to dailydive365.com. We have our Church Solutions podcast. We've had Steve and Heywood on here before, and we'll have them on again. We have a blog at blog.streamingchurch.tv. And of course, our main product is streamingchurch.tv. And so here's how you can win. If you want to win this camera, and you need to send us an email right now to support@streamingchurch.tv and put down in the subject matter Studio 4K. Studio 4K, go to email support@streamingchurch.tv. Stephen, tell us a little bit about what this camera is.
So this camera is a fixed camera. This is not your typical PTZ. You can digitally move it up and down once you've used the zoom and zoomed in a little bit. So if you're all the way zoomed out, you're not going to be able to move it inside the lens up or down, or left or right is out of the question. You have to physically move the camera. And at the top there, Phil, you can see it's like a little white box. That's your tally light. This has a built-in tally light, and this is our first ever Hive linked camera. So you could literally throw it on your network and be connected to Hive.
That's nice. Okay.
Yeah. So you got the 12 or 20x, white or gray.
Good deal. So support@streamingchurch.tv. After the webinar is done, we will use AI to choose a winner. That's right. We're high tech around here. And so we'll choose a winner, and we will get back to the winner. We'll send you the winner an email, and Stephen from PTZOptics will get that as well, and he will send out the camera to you probably next week or so, all right?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, so all right. So support@streamingchurch.tv. Send your email, all right? And now it's time for some Q&A. We have got some questions that I think everybody will enjoy. Did I get rid of this? Yeah, everybody can see Stephen here. So we've got several questions here, and we've got George Herbert here said, well, let's just read it. You said as many as you have bandwidth. What is a typical bandwidth for a PTZOptics studio cam stream?
Well, that really depends, George. That depends on what you have it configured for inside of your interface, well, your web interface for the PTZOptics camera. If you give me a second here, I can switch over to the back end of my camera and kind of show you, because obviously I have it set up with NDI. And so let me actually go to that to make it easier here. So in the back end here of a PTZ camera. So right now you're seeing one in my studio. And we're going to kind of go over here. You can set it up to all different types. Let me find NDI here. Device info, system settings. That's where your profiles are at. Video config. There it is, NDI settings. All right. I want to make sure I'm not on a beta. So in your NDI settings, if you're using NDI, you can go in here and configure the bit rate for your camera. I'm trying to find our default on the default settings. on the streaming settings here. Let me look here. I think my default, I want to say it was like 32, it was like 32,000, something like that for the NDI. But you can lower that down. Like we did at the church, we lowered it down to 16. I think we tried it with 16, and then we went to 8 megabits per second. So it really depends on what you want to set it, for to lower it down, what's going to work. So at the church, in order for us to do 4 on the old network settings, we had to do 8. But we're hoping with the whole new network setup that we're able to adjust that and go back up to, I think it was 32. I was trying to find that location here inside of here where you can adjust that for how much NDI is pumping out. Because that's where you want to make the change inside of your camera. And every camera is going to be different. There you go. Right here. That's the page I was on. So I have it at SDI here. Let me go down here. You want to see, oops, there it is. Right here. I don't know if you guys can see that, but I'm going to try to highlight it right here in blue. Right now, my bit rate for the 4K move, this is a 30X camera, is at 32,768 kilobits per second, or 32 meg. You can drop that and lower that. If your bandwidth is, if you see the camera flashing, if you see it, choking, or Hive's having a real hard time, you can do that as well. We offer 2 different IP streams inside of here. You got, you can choose your encoder. So you got to really play around with it to see what's going to best work for your network. I wish there was just a be all end all Phil and Steve like theory or math, to just be like, yes, this is going to work. But I've seen different results on different computers based on, what I have that set to. The encoder, if I have it set high or have it set low, really, really depends. Yes, absolutely. So I will tell you this, as a church, we will pull in, we're using the brand new 4K moves, okay? We do not have our camera set to 32,768 kilobits per second. We just don't. And so what we've set it to is pure straight 8,000. So if you're having issues where the camera's being volatile, as you said in the chat, try changing it in the back end of your camera. Change the NDI settings to 8,000. If you're streaming out 1080 like we are, we're not even doing 4K. In some instances, people have requested just go back to 720. We do a 720 feed. 8,000 is going to be more than plenty. You really don't need to see if the pastor shaved that day in 4K. I mean, so you're good in that count. But I do recommend playing around with it. You might get more, you might get less.
Another question here. You mentioned Mac. How
Yes.
many cameras have you been able to do on a new M4?
So me personally, I have not done anything on an M4. I'd love to play with an M4. I still have the M Studio that I bought last year. I have the Mac M2 Studio Max, if that's any consolation to our chatter here. It is 32 gigs of memory, and so I'm running the latest on everything. I was able to get 4 cameras in this with no problem, with plenty of headroom over it on an M2. So I'm assuming the 4, with the improvements that they made to it, you're probably going to be sitting around maybe 4 to 6 cameras, again, depending if you're doing 4K, depending on your bandwidth, those types of things. So let me see here.
Another question here. What protocol does the Bridge app use? And security?
So it is secure. I don't know that. I'm not an engineer, unfortunately, so I would have to get back to you on that. I don't have the answer for that on the security, or it's to my knowledge, it's using a form of WebRTC. So I would assume it's the same security measures, but I don't want to make assumptions here. So I would have to get back to you. That might be a good question to ask in the Slack, or not the Slack group, the Discord group, guys. If you want to join the PTZOptics one, go in there and ask one of our engineers that are in there. Unfortunately, I'm not privy to that information.
Another question here. Do you foresee your interface handling audio mixing as well someday in the future?
That is something I have been screaming and yelling for since day one. I really want to have that ability inside of Hive, and like anything, all good things come to those that wait, right? I want to see live video switching in Hive. These are all feature requests that I've put out myself, as well as other individuals that have beta tested this. So from what I've been told, sky's the limit. So, I would just kind of wait and see what happens in the next couple months after it's released. And, we'll see what kind of features come. But yes, I am with you 100%.
Here's another one. So on bandwidth, you said you had yours set at 8 megabytes per second times 4 equals 32 plus some safe overhead like, times 1.5. It means for 4 cameras, we are talking about 50 megabytes per second upload speed at the church.
So at our church, we actually have 1,000 megabits down and we have 50 megabits up for our, that's since nobody's there all week except for like a prayer service in the evening on Wednesdays. We're still, they've worked with us. We have Armstrong Cable, and they've worked with us to where we don't have to go to Enterprise. That's the last package we could get, the highest bandwidth that we could get before going to Enterprise and getting charged Enterprise. So do we need 1,000 megabits down? No, we don't need it, but we needed that upload. We needed the upload speed that was available to, because we go to multiple destinations and, networking within the church. So just like this, being able to remote into the Hive system. So we wanted that. So that's what we went with. But yeah, you're talking about a good chunk of bandwidth for a church. Yeah. So if you're mathing 50, I would recommend at least 100 if you're going to try to do that.
All right. Here's a question. If you have a fountain in your office, can you still use this product?
Well, that really depends if your boss is Steve Lacey or not, and if it could be tolerated. But I don't see no harm in that.
All right, so a couple questions here. What about latency? Is latency an issue with this, and how much is it?
So the latency that I've pinpointed, like, I don't want to say it's perfect, but for me, it's pretty daggone close to perfect. Like, I would say like 0.2 of a second from the time I move it. It's pretty responsive. It's not like if you're in TeamViewer or some other remote in program where you're trying to move stuff and it pauses and hesitates. You guys saw it when I was moving the pointer around. The camera was moving every which direction in real time that I was moving it. Enough to do a production that I'm satisfied with it, because in the beginning, when we were going through pre-alpha beta, we had to tighten that latency up because I was not satisfied, and I know a lot of other team members on our engineering team was not satisfied with it.
So you're good with that. You mentioned earlier, maybe you answered this question, but you mentioned allowing Steve in Arizona to operate. What about multiple operators in different parts of the country? Can you at the same time, can they both have controls? How's that work?
Oh yeah, we've had multiple people in the same. It was kind of funny. They were fighting over each other on the camera. Like, obviously,
I was going to say, yeah,
you would want to be on like a
right?
Skype call or a FaceTime call with Steve and be like, "All right, I'm operating camera 2. Stay off of it. I'm good." And then he's like, "All right, well, I'm on 3, so don't touch it." Yes, to be able to do that, and you can set up, like, depending on the account size that you get. Like I said, camera 1 for one camera, it's going to be free, but we're going to have different packages depending on how many cameras that you want to add and how many studios. So what that means is, like, we could have, say, my church as a studio. You could have my house here with the cameras that I have as a studio and select different studios from within your Hive account to control, to basically build a business. Like, if you're in the business of helping houses of worship, you could offer your services and buy the highest tier package that we have and go out and build a business off of remotely setting up churches like Jake Goslin does, only he goes into the church physically. You could do some of the stuff that he does. I'm not trying to take business away from you, Jake, but I'm just using it as an example because that's what he does. He helps churches that do not have somebody on staff to help them. And so that's where I could see this. I know, Steve, you kind of asked this question we were talking before. In my area, there's not a lot of people at different churches that have the tech expertise in live video that I do. I'm in, Phil knows, he grew up in this area. It's you're Amish country, man. Like, there's tech is a foreign thing. People were using dial-up 5 years ago. Okay. So I get calls a lot. Like, how do I do this at my church? And I literally have to drive sometimes an hour away to help them set up. Like, this makes my job easier. I could just get them set up on Hive and go in. They want to buy whatever I recommend, because if it's working for you, I want that same thing. I don't want to have to fight with it. So that's what we do. So it really adds to it.
Okay. Next question. Does PTZOptics, I lost the question. Does PTZOptics have any plans around Dante in the future, or supporting it in the future with Hive?
Yeah, like I said before, yeah, that's 100%. It's one of our cameras. As you guys know, we have the the Dante cameras for the huddle cam side of our business. And so that wouldn't surprise me any if Dante is supported. Like I said, there's other tools out there right now that will give you that ability right now even. We use Dante at the church with our ex.
Let me ask a newbie question. So let's say, oh, this looks really interesting, and my church has got a few cameras set up. I'm not even sure if they're on NDI or not. And I said, hey, this looks great. I want to do this. I'm going to need to find a computer to host this locally, right? So I'd either buy one and typically it's going to be a pretty much of a powerhouse of a computer. I install Hive and then I start setting up cameras. And do they need to be on NDI? Or
so you could use a Hive. Well, we use NDI because it's simple, but it does have RTMP, RTSP capabilities. But our goal is not that you go buy a separate PC to run this, right? This is something maybe you run it on your already powerhouse PC that's running a vMix or an OBS for your production, right? So the idea is if you're already at the church, you're probably not going to use Hive because you're already there doing it, right? The idea is that nobody is there and you need somebody to do it. So that machine would just be working as a Hive machine for that week that you're not there. And then you would have vMix at home. You could do the NDI out of Hive into your vMix, sit there and switch within your vMix, add graphics, make it look like you're sitting in front of the church's streaming computer without physically being there. You're using your home bandwidth to stream out and going to streamingchurch.tv's website and going. That's our goal with it. Now, if somebody's going into business, Steve, yeah, you might want a separate computer from what you're doing for other things that you can kind of dedicate and build toward this. That would be my suggestions.
But Hive's running on the network at the church, right? And then I'm accessing the Hive.
Correct.
Okay.
Right through the browser. It's almost like if you've ever used TeamViewer or Log Me In or something like that. You're peer to peer.
Hey, what's the
So yeah, I figured that question was going to come up. And complete transparency, we do not have a finalized price list, if you will, yet. But rest assured that price point will come when the announcement's made that the beta tag's off and anybody can go and get it. So I'm sure you're going to hear about it. And my hope is, this is my hope, that with NAB coming up, my hope is that beta tag gets removed for NAB. That hasn't been told to me. It hasn't been said, yes, this is in stone. Maybe it'll be IBC. But my hope is, in the next couple months, we see that beta tag removed because I feel like we're just about there. I know the other team members feel like we're just about there. Pricing structure will be there. From what I've heard the numbers kick around at, it's going to be very affordable, especially for somebody trying to do business with this. It'll be.
So is it a subscription based? I mean, do you know, is it a one-time deal or subscription based, or do you even know?
They're going to be monthly or yearly, however they do that, because obviously we're going to be adding features as we go, because it's, a web-based solution. It has to be like a service because it's using servers and whatnot.
So right now, if I go to the website, it says there's a wait list. So I want to sign up for the wait list. Does that mean I'm going to get?
Like I said, since we're close to removing that beta tag, maybe they're not going to add any more into. That's why I said I didn't know if it was closed or not yet. Sometimes if you join the wait list and even if we're going to, let's say tomorrow they remove the beta and somebody says, oh yeah, well, this guy works for this company. Yeah, let's give him a peek at this. They might still let you in, whoever's, holding the keys to the kingdom, so to speak. But that's how it's always been for even beta testers. Like if you wanted to be a beta tester, you join the wait list and then they'll let you in, how it goes. So yeah, so just as Phil said earlier, PTZOptics.com/Hive lets you read about Hive, learn about it, what it can do, what it can't do, that type of thing. But if you want to try to join the wait list, the beta test, however much longer we have a beta, it's hive.ptzoptics.com, and then follow the on-screen instructions. And that's how you can gain access if they let you in.
All right. Did I miss some questions here? Are we pretty much ready to wrap up? All right. Okay. Well, folks, we want to thank everybody for being a part of our webinar. This is being recorded, so we will make this available later. You can just go to streamingchurch.tv/webinar, and you'll be able to see not only this webinar later, probably tomorrow or whatever, or the other webinars we've done in the past. And by all means, if you have any questions, you can always reach out to us at streamingchurch.tv. We will announce the giveaway of the camera, but later today we'll send an email to the winner, And we appreciate everybody involved here today. Thank you so much for spending some time with us. We really do appreciate you. And stay tuned for our next webinar coming up in April. On behalf of everybody here, Stephen Heywood, Michael Gray, Steve Lacey, I'm Phil Thompson. Have yourself a great day.